I think it's a game of high stakes poker. It's putting more pressure on ByteDance to take the majority ownership stake by the US, but ultimately it's about the source code. Remember, that was the issue that happened with the Microsoft deal, that in terms of those export rules, I think it's the source code issue and the majority stake that continues to be here. Look, I ultimately think it's a game of high stakes poker. It puts more pressure going into the weekend with the Sunday night deadline. That's going to be the key here, in my opinion.
It is tough for the owners and operators of the companies, no question about it. And it sounds like there is a deal that could be approved that could satisfy this. Again, I think we've seen in other negotiations like this, President Trump's MO is to make a grand announcement and then declare victory while accepting tiny concessions that don't move it. And my guess is that that's what the boards of the companies and the managements of the companies are hoping for. Otherwise, as your prior guest raised and everybody's talking about, there may be major retaliations here. And I know that we want to think it's America first, that's the mission, and we're going to decouple from China, but these economies are totally interlinked, not just technologically. And so that is much easier said than done. And you could easily see this escalating if we don't, in fact, resolve a situation like this.
Well, one of the things I worry about, Joe, because I focus on the tech sector, is out of all the things, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, this intensifying battle in technology between the U.S. and China is what scares me the most. They have a decision that they've made that they want to take, particularly their semiconductor industry, aggressively in-house. And we're allowing them to do that. And as that progresses over time, right now they probably are producing about 40% of the chips that they own. In about 4 or 5 years, they want to get to 70%. At that point, because that's the most important part of technology for the U.S. vis-a-vis the relations with China, if we get to that point, we are going to need them more than they need us. And that's really worrisome for technology.
Well, look, I think this is a good example of what I suspect we're going to see a lot over the next 2 or 3 months, which is this is more about politics than it is anything else. There's going to be a competition amongst the presidential campaigns to look more aggressive on China. It's very hard to see how you get resolution of much of anything during this window. And so, markets are just going to have to get used to the fact that we're going to get a bunch of headlines which sound more and more hawkish. If it's real and we get through the election, I'm absolutely sure the Chinese would retaliate.
This was almost a predictable action with regard to TikTok, in that it's delayed and that there's the possibility of a deal. The WeChat move forward is aggressive and it's almost instantaneous. And it is a bit of a surprise that it's as sort of draconian as it is. That obviously ByteDance has an option to fix this with the type of deal that they've been talking about with Oracle and Walmart, but Tencent there's nothing they can do about this at this point, and it will be a large effect on the Chinese diaspora here in the U.S. Because so many Chinese people in the U.S. use WeChat to communicate with family, obviously knowing that it's censored and knowing that there are all these different other restrictions that set, but it is the standard way to communicate like text messaging is here in the United States.